tens of people will love this.
KZMB All Zombie Radio.
Hello, everybody. I'm Punky Brewster. I'm here with Aiden, and this is Zombification Education, an introductory course. My friend Aiden has gone to school for film and just graduated. Congratulations. I felt like I said that weird. Just graduated. Congratulations. And he, despite loving The Walking Dead, has not watched many a zombie film as I have. And so here we are. The premise to our little show. Aiden hasn't seen zombie movies. I've seen them a lot. And so we're going to watch them and talk about them. So where should we start other than the godfather of all zombies, George Romero's first feature-length film, Night of the Living Dead, a 1968 Image 10 production, co-written by George Romero and John A. Russo / John Russo / Jack Russo, because he goes by a lot of names. These two bad boys were college buddies who wrote a little movie together that ended up becoming a cult classic. Oh my goodness. Okay, this movie. All right. Well, let's start. Aiden, like, what? Okay. Before we jump into like the synopsis, what was your like initial reaction to this when you started watching it?
Just like in general, like how I felt like viewing it for the first time.
Yeah, like what did you think? Yeah.
Well, so like obviously I hadn't seen it, which we know. But I was excited. I was like, I don't know why, because I've wanted to watch it for such a long time, but I guess maybe I was like subconsciously scared I wouldn't enjoy it. And because it is like the zombie film, like the thing that started it all, I was very nervous. But I had a good time with it. I was definitely like, I knew it was low budget. I knew all of that, right? But I will say there were like some moments where I laughed out loud because I just wasn't ready for like, I hadn't like fully switched back in the time yet, especially at the start. Like,
yes,
like the zombies having like literally pretty much no makeup on. Like the only way you could tell they were a zombie is if they had like a tear in their shirt, which was hilarious. And just like, there's a lot of things we can talk about later as far as like, the shots that were used and the way they like choreographed like fight scenes. But just even a lot of the dialogue delivery was funny to me. Just like, Barbara, they're coming for you. Like, I was just like...
It's my favorite. This is my favorite of the whole movie.
It was so cool. But getting back into it was just an experience. And I had a really good time with it. I really did.
Good. I'm so glad. I was a little worried because, like, it's a black and white film, and I know for some people that's like really off-putting. I would hope not for you because you went to film school, so like, why would you be like a black and white is horrible? Like, no, it's like classic cinema, right? But even for the time, it was a little unusual. 1968, color pictures were definitely a thing. But this was a low budget film. The budget came in at $150,000 for the whole production, which is crazy. And black and white, well, that makes special effects a lot easier.
Oh, I was sitting there and I was like, especially like, which I guess this is jumping ahead a little bit, but I mean, if you're watching this, you've seen the movie, so what's it matter? During Helen's I was like, you can't convince me that's not chocolate syrup. Like, I'm 100% positive that was totally chocolate syrup that they used for her blood. I mean, I could be totally wrong on that, but that just looked like that to me. And just the way
it was chocolate
syrup. Okay, yeah. So it was like
it was
a lot of it,
and
just the way they filmed. Yeah, it was very clear, but like, I enjoyed it. I watched a couple of different things and did, a little bit of a digging and realized that, almost everyone who was on the crew was on screen at some point or another, and pretty much everyone in the cast
Mhm.
was a part of it in some way, shape, or form, which I thought was really cool. Um, so I really enjoyed that because when not only are you like on camera, but like they're also the behind the camera talent. So really, it's just a full on labor of love from this small group of people, which I think gives it a lot more
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah. This movie opens on a long car ride out of the city. How dare Mother ask Johnny and Barbara, our assumed protagonists, head into a cemetery to leave flowers at their father's grave as per Mother's request. Ugh, such a long schlep out of the city. Johnny is not happy and is very vocal about that. They get to the grave, and Johnny waxes philosophical on the fact that they've wasted so much time. Um, and Barbara says, "Well, if you had gotten up earlier, this wouldn't have taken so long," which technically isn't true because it still would have taken the same amount of time, but they wouldn't have been there so late in the day.
Well, there's no one around.
Well, it's late. If you'd gotten up earlier.
Oh, look, I already lost an hour's sleep on the time change.
I think you complain just to hear yourself talk.
Johnny, being a classic a-hole of a brother, begins pointing at a man played by one Bill Hinsman, um, a man who is kind of weirdly stumbling through the cemetery, and Johnny's just going, my favorite line of the entire movie.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're ignorant.
They're coming for you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're acting like a child.
They're coming for you. Look, there comes one of them now.
They're coming to get you, Barbara. So good. The delivery is excellent. This movie has been remade a number of times. No one ever delivers that line in that same way. It's such a great delivery. It's so good. Um, so love it. Anyway, they were in fact coming to get Barbara, and Johnny. So he wasn't wrong. There is a tussle in the cemetery with who is known as the cemetery ghoul. They are, fun fact, never referred to as zombies in this movie. So, ghouls is the official term. So, the cemetery ghoul, played by Hinsman, comes at Barbara, and Johnny, then, being not such an a-hole brother, does step in to his demise, unfortunately. Barbara takes off running towards the car. She does not have the keys, and there is a whole weird scene where this ghoul is using tools and trying to open up the car door, which he apparently would be able to, which is like terrifying. That is terrifying. I hate I hate it. If the zombie apocalypse ever happens, I don't ever want it to happen this way. Okay? There's another movie that's worse, and you'd think it'd be fast zombies, and it's not, my friends. It's way worse than that. And we'll get into that later because this is a series, so we'll get to that movie later. But it's worse. So Barbara surprisingly puts the car into neutral, which was a brilliant idea. She cuts the brake off and just rolls on down the hill. Super smart. However, her driving
Would
skills, women. Am I right? Am I right, man? What in the like? This is the reason that there are bad there are bad stereotypes about women drivers. This is where it stems from. She is patient zero of women being bad drivers. What was that, dude? I mean, I get it. You don't have power steering, right? Like you really gotta crank on the wheel, but like you just straight up ran into a tree. Very avoidable.
You're asking a lot from her. Based on what we see throughout this movie, you're asking a lot from Barbara. Barbara, please! You're asking a lot.
Poor Barbara. Barbara didn't do a lot for the women's rights movement. You know what I mean? Barbara, I love you. I love you. I love you, Barbara. So so she, nails into a tree. Suddenly the car is no good, and she crawls out. Cemetery Ghoul is still just right behind her, and she runs. And she ends up in a house. We don't know whose house this is, other than that the owner is just straight up dead. And like grossly dead. That's one of the iconic images from this film too, is the woman who is dead at the top of the staircase. That like weird. There's some really good practical effects. It's like super weird, but it's like everything's like chewed out except for like her eye. It's gnarly. It is gnarly. And Barbara stumbles upon that and promptly becomes catatonic. So that's it for Barbara. Basically, thanks, Barbara. Protagonist who? It's not her. She does deliver some great lines later, but she's out for the bulk of this movie. So she's in this house, and in comes our true protagonist, our true hero, Ben. Played by Dwayne Jones. She'll come back to that later. That's a little fun. It's a little fun fact. We'll come back to that later. Played by Dwayne Jones. So this film originally was written with Ben's character being kind of like an angry truck driver. And upon receiving the role, Dwayne Jones actually rewrote a lot of his own lines. So we can truly not even is just Ben the hero, but Dwayne Jones is truly the hero of this film, because former professor turned actor into scriptwriter, apparently, because he just rewrote a bunch of his stuff and actually changed the entire ending of this film. So, round of applause for Dwayne. Thank you so much, Mr. Jones. Seriously. So Ben comes into the house and finds Barbara just acting a complete and utter fool. And he is desperate to seal up the house to protect them. So he's looking for wood all throughout the house. He's hammering and nailing. He's ripping doors off their hinges and putting them up. And he says, Barbara, but I don't know your name yet because you didn't tell me. Go find wood so I can save us. And she brings the tiniest twigs I've ever seen in my entire life. She just brings kindling out of the fireplace. Thanks, Barbara. Just what a piece of work. Anyway, so then Ben is working hard on protecting the house. He finds a radio. He turns the radio on so we can listen to the radio broadcast. At this point, Barbara's literally just chilling on the sofa, completely out of it. Ben has now spent hours getting all of the windows and doors boarded up. It's looking real good. And he finds a gun. And he's like, I'm going to go upstairs and check upstairs. Really, he was going to go hide the body that clearly had disturbed Barbara so much. So he goes to head up there. I think at this point, he's probably punched her. He sucks her one good, doesn't he?
What's going on out there? This is no Sunday school picnic.
Don't you understand? My brother is alone.
Your brother is dead.
No! My brother is not dead. Oh. Oh.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for it because I literally texted you and I was like, he is so over Barbara's shit right now. And I was like, it's kind of cracking me up. And then he hit her and I was like, okay, it's not funny anymore. It was funny, but now it's not. Um, but it
So
really caught me
that was the
off guard.
first that was the first time that a black male was on film hitting a white woman. Um there's a lot of social stuff that came up throughout this film. Um, Not all of it was intentional. It just happened. So Ben's character was just written as a character. It's this angry truck driver. That's what he was written as, and they gave the role to the best actor. Love that. Also love that
Yeah,
for
what a concept.
1968. Okay, what
Yeah,
an idea.
exactly. Yeah, the time and yeah.
Yeah. So that was a really big deal. And actually, Terry Crews is a huge Night of the Living Dead fan and has gone on social media sharing like how this influenced him so strongly because this was unheard of. Um, that a black male would have been given like a lead in a horror movie. This was the first time that ever happened. But two, on top of that, that a black male was given a just an acting job based purely on his acting chops, like just purely on merit. And the fact that that happened then shifted the entire dynamic of this film, which is it's just really cool that it progressed it in such a different way. So so just I mean just thank you Dwayne Jones for just for everything that you contributed to this film. Um, it's incredible. It really is. Okay, so Ben goes to remove the lady from the top of the staircase, and Barbara is um, catatonic, but does see out of the corner of her eye that something is coming from behind the door out from the basement.
Reports which have been verified as completely as is possible in this confused situation. It is happening.
It's two dudes, Tom and Harry. Um, so Tom and Harry have been hiding in the cellar, as it turns out, this whole time. And I love the fact that Ben is like, where were you? Like, I was doing all this work. Where were you two schmoes? I love that. I love that. He's like, where were you guys? I was working. Oh, well, we couldn't hear anything. Well, we heard the screaming. Okay, but you just told me you couldn't hear anything. I love that. Where he's like, you just said you couldn't hear anything down there.
Yeah, I love that. He's like,
Caught.
what, you really expected us to come up here and help you? Really? Like he was like wanted him to do the right thing. He was very upset about that.
It was so funny. It was so funny. So, Harry Cooper is dad of the Cooper family. There are two other Coopers, Helen and Karen. Helen is Harry's wife, which, okay, can we talk here for a second? Marilyn Eastman plays Helen. Okay. How did Harry land such a smoke show of a wife? Like, really and truly. Okay? She's like a total babe. Harry is like a cowering, just ween.
He did not deserve her.
He did
She was my
not.
favorite character in this movie. She was my favorite character in this movie.
The tood she gave him, just amazing. So Harry and Tom and Ben squabble for a while about the fact that they should have helped him board up the house and they didn't. And Harry is convinced the cellar is the place to be. The cellar is the place you need to be if you want to live. Everywhere else is dangerous. Being in the house is dangerous. At this point in the movie, we have figured out that the ghouls do not care for light or fire, and we're getting updates over the radio. So there are people that are like discovering things in real time, and so that information is being shared with us. And so we're learning that the dead are coming to life, but also the dead are coming to life and they are eating people. That was not something we had seen prior to this point, but it is revealed through the radio. There is a point around this time where Ben tells this story. It's while he's like boarding stuff up. He tells this story about how like his first interaction, that there's like a truck driver and it's like driving all crazy down the road and it like runs into like a little diner or whatever, or convenience mart. And that is like that scene, because it was never shown, but it creates such a distinct image in your head, is included in a ton of horror films, by the way. Like the remake of Dawn of the Dead, the Dawn of the Dead that came out in the early 2000s, that one has that at the beginning of the movie. That scene. So, and it's like recreated in other movies. Like you can kind of see it in the background of like some other movies as well. So it's just really interesting that it painted such a vivid piece of imagery that the people have incorporated it later in other things. All right. So it's Harry Cooper versus Ben. Harry's like, we need to go to the cellar and I'm going to go there and I'm going to lock it up and you guys are suckers. And Ben is like, well, I'm keeping all the food, so you're a sucker, because what are you going to do down there with nothing? And so Harry leaves and does go down there, and he talks to his wife, and his wife is like, you're so dumb. And I hate you, clearly. It's the vibe that their marriage has. She does not seem to like him very much. She does a lot of like, are you done yet? To him, which is hysterical to me. I absolutely love it. And so they do end up coming back up. Tom has a lady friend with him named Judy. And so that's our cast. We have Harry, Helen, and Karen Cooper. Karen Cooper is not a very active character because she, it is later uncovered, has been bitten by one of the ghouls and is very sick. It's very sickly. We have Tom and Judy. We have Barbara and Ben. Johnny's already dead. The rest are ghouls. The only other character that we really get to know is Sheriff McClellan, who is just a really special person. just a real special person who delivers my second favorite line of the movie, which we'll get to in a little bit. So everybody's on the main floor, and now we're trying to come up with a plan on how to get out. There's a TV that's been found, and so now we're getting like TV news segments that we get to watch, which is really cool because it gives like, it builds the world for you while not having to showcase like really large scenes, right? It's just like little stories are told to you. So what they're finding is that if you can hit the ghoul hard enough in the head, that will take them out. But that's the only way. And they are suggesting that you head to these rescue centers. And so they want to head to the rescue center in Willard, Pennsylvania, which is about they said it was like a couple miles out, maybe like 17 miles, I think they say, something like that. So it's like supposed to be relatively close because they're out like in the kind of in the country, in the boondocks. So they need to go, and there's a truck right outside, but there's no gas in the truck. There's a gas pump. They have to get to it. So they decide they're going to take kerosene from the basement and mason jars, and they make Molotov cocktails, and Harry's going to throw them from the second story, and Ben and Tom are going to go get the truck and fill it up and roll on. Okay. So the plan is going accordingly. Judy kind of jacks it up for a second. Judy decides in her frantic, I don't know, what is with the women in this movie other than Helen? Helen's the only one who knows where it's at. You know what I mean? Everybody else is like, I can't think. I'm crazy. I'm so scared. Which I mean, I get it, because like, how would I act? I have no idea. The dead have never risen in front of me. So how would I truly handle it? I'm not really sure. I'd probably be like Barbara. I'd probably be laying around, just useless. But anyway, um, so they go get the truck. They take the truck to the pump, and I love Ben. I love Ben, but he makes the most critical mistake at this point. He has a torch. Okay, he has a torch that he's made out of like a it's like the dining room leg, the dining room table leg. He's made this torch out of. And he puts it down like very close to where the truck is. And the gas tank is right there, like right next to it. And so when Tom turns with the pump, which really did pumps just spew gasoline back in the day?
Well, he also shot it, which was a choice.
Yeah. So, yep, it was a choice. It was a choice. Yeah, so the pump is locked. They have a key that they found in the basement that they think is going to work for it. Doesn't work. So Ben just shoots it, which is terrifying. Not a great move.
Choices were made.
Then he puts down his torch in the line of the gasoline. Then I'm not really sure if gasoline pumps just shot out like gasoline, like just wildly, but that's what's happening.
Well, that's what I was trying to
I
figure
don't
out.
know
I was
why.
like, did they shot it? Did something like, you know what I mean? Like
I
when
don't
they
know,
shot it,
or
did it?
is Tom an idiot?
I mean, I think everyone in this movie is pretty much an idiot. So, for the most
So
part,
is Tom like grabbing the handle and is just like, it's like that scene in Zoolander where they're like
there was
having
a
a
lot
gasoline fight.
for every putting the car in neutral moment. There was like 3 or 4 really dumb choices.
Come on! This key won't work. Watch out. Watch the torch!
Like, I think we might have passed it because it's not necessarily very important. But first of all, that recliner scene where they put the recliner, I'm assuming it was recliner, the chair on the porch,
The
um,
chair, yeah.
and they set it on fire, which, first of all, if it was that easy to kick off the porch to the point where it flipped over, like 5 seconds later, you'd think you just wouldn't have left it on the porch in the first place so you wouldn't catch the house on fire. But I guess
I
it didn't really
know.
matter. And that was a light ass chair, so because he kicked out with
I
one
know.
leg and that thing flipped.
It's like no one in this universe has ever handled fire safely.
Handle-
They just don't know.
I get that this
Like,
universe,
I don't get it.
and really any universe, didn't have zombies yet, but I just didn't realize that it also didn't have common sense, because there was a lot of questionable.
Yeah, there really was. There really was. Yeah, the chair was not wise. Ben is not super great with fire. I'm not gonna lie to you. Not super great with fire. Anyway, so I don't know. Tom's wildly flailing around with gasoline, and anyway, he sprays it all over the side of the truck as well, and then it just bursts into flames. And then, Ben's like trying to stop the pump from going up. So, like, good on you, Ben. Like, thank you for having the foresight to think this is gonna explode. So he like grabs a rug or something and throws it over like where the hose is so that it doesn't crawl back into the pump and explode. Meanwhile, Tom and Judy just take off in the truck while it's ablaze.
Choices.
I don't know what that choice. Why? I don't know. They panicked, obviously. Well, then Judy couldn't get out of the truck because her jacket got caught. You had one job, Judy. It was to get out of the truck. You weren't even supposed to be there. You got Tom killed.
She doesn't even
Anyway.
go here.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's get out of here. Come on, come on.
My jacket's caught.
Anyway, they blew up. Then Ben runs back to the house miraculously with his club torch. He's able to get back. And and Harry he doesn't let him in. Harry made a choice. He was going to go down to the cellar and say, screw this. And Ben bursts through the door and he sees Harry like by the cellar door. So he knows now.
He burst in that house
that
like
Harry
a
wasn't
Kool-Aid
going to let
man,
him
let
in.
me tell you.
Oh my god. Oh yeah. And they have to barricade the door now because Ben just busted the lock. You've created yet another problem. It's fine. It's fine. So we'll barricade the door. So they barricade the door with a door. That's really what happened. It sounds wild, but they did. And and then Ben takes that opportunity to wallop Harry one good. Harder than he hit Barbara earlier. Just right in the eye. And and he
What
hits
a choice
Harry
of
and
word,
they're
wallop.
brawling. They're just brawling. All right. So, Ben whoops him one good, and Harry stops fighting back. Essentially, is what happens. He's done. Bless you. He's done fighting. So he just, he's bleeding from his nose, and he feels like the ween that he is, and then then we move on, and now we've got to come up with an alternative plan, right? Like how are people supposed to get out of this house? So they start asking about cars, and this is where Barbara comes back into play, baby. Barbara's back with some crazy nonsense. So Barbara is literally just like spouting from the mouth at this point. She's just like saying random things, but it becomes so, it's not intended to be funny, but it becomes so humorous to me. The stuff that she says, it is so funny. So Ben's asking the Coopers at this point, because like right Tom and Judy are gone, so we don't know what happened with their car. Ben's asking the Coopers, where is your car? And they're like, it's overturned on a road. And he's like, but if we flipped it over, could we drive it? And they're like, no, I remember running for a long time. So they ran for a while. They think it's like over a mile away. Then, then Barbara's just like, Johnny had the keys. Johnny had the keys. I couldn't get the keys. Johnny had the keys. And she's just rambling. And Ben is like, wait, you have a car? Like, where is it? And it's so funny because her response is so great. She's basically like, you're not going to be able to drive it. Johnny has the keys.
Johnny has the keys. You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
You have a car? Where? Where is it?
You won't be able to start it.
Yeah.
I just said Johnny has the keys. How are you not getting this? Johnny has the keys. It was a very funny to me. I don't think it's intended to be, but it is hilarious. So it's kind of ruled out. Like, that's not an option either. What are they going to do? Well, at this point, the power goes out. And we don't know if it's a power outage or if somehow the ghouls have figured out a way to turn off the power. They hate lights. And we did see them earlier in the movie take rocks and bash out the lights on the truck, which is interesting. But clearly they're like opposed to light. So, were they planning that? Anyway, they go to look for the fuse box. And Ben's like, there's got to be a fuse box in the cellar. So he heads down there. And while he's down there in the dark, there's this weird little interaction between Harry and Helen. He's like, Helen, I've got to get that gun. And Helen's like, and Helen, you know, she's the boss. So she's like, haven't you had enough already? Like, she's just like so done with this guy. And Ben comes back up, and then we get this it's a really great shot. We get this sinister close up on a hand going to pick up a rock. And then it's like a ghoul like walking towards, and then one picks up the club that Bennett had earlier, and now they can get closer to the house because all the lights are off, and so they start attacking the doors and the windows. Okay, so this is like the pivotal point in the movie. This is the climax of the movie, right? Like, our people are stuck in the house now. What are they gonna do? And so the dead are trying to get in. Ben is frantically trying to block the windows and doors still. Helen goes to help him. And there is a point where Ben drops the gun on the floor. And so instead of helping, Harry takes his opportunity to go and grab the gun because he's a beehole. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to get this gun for me. I don't know why, dude, because like everybody's going to die if we don't protect the doors, but okay. So he goes to grab the gun. Ben's able to get it back from him, and he shoots him. Ben shoots Harry, which is wild. And Harry, you know, falls down into the cellar. And when he gets down to the bottom of the cellar, you know, because he kind of like crawls his way down the stairs, and he's going to check on his daughter. Well, anyway, she's a ghoul now. She's a ghoul. So he's dead. He's donezo. And he dies anyway because he was shot and he's dying. And so we don't know what else happens with that, but all of a sudden we go back upstairs and they're still trying to fight to keep the doors and windows shut. And Helen is blocking the door, but ghouls are like, their hands are coming over the door and they're grabbing at her. And Barbara out of nowhere comes out and like puts herself in a position to protect Helen, which is like, where did this come from? Barbara's been catatonic the whole time. She protects Helen, and Helen gets away. So Helen runs down the stairs to the cellar where she finds her daughter in a ghoul state, now eating her husband. So gross. I found out that the body parts that Karen was eating, the little girl was eating, were leftovers from lunch that they coated in chocolate syrup because that's what they use for the blood. So she said that's what she was eating, was chocolate covered like burgers and stuff, which is so gross. So anyway, then Karen attacks Helen, and it's got like this really weird sound effect on it where it's like very 60s. The sound effect where it's like this weird echoey sound effect. It's like, ah! I don't know, we'll put in a clip here. It's like really weird. That was a horrible rendition of it, but oh
baby. Baby.
Anyway, so Helen is killed violently by her daughter, who does not just like straight up eat her. She like stabs her with a spade over and over again. Wild. Anyway, so during this time frame, Barbara has stepped in, you know, for Helen. Well, she is grabbed by ghouls and taken, and so
and one
Barbara's
of
now
them
gone.
is, I said, and one of those ghouls is her brother. Yeah.
Johnny Boy. Yeah, Johnny Boy's
I'm
back.
coming to get you, Bob.
So sad.
No!
Reunited and it feels so good. Not really. It is kind of funny because it's very poetic because she does go on a huge thing about like, we have to go get Johnny. We have to go get Johnny. We have to find Johnny. He's out there. It's like earlier in the movie and she's just like laying into bed about how they gotta go find him. That's why he wallops her one good. Because she's going hysterical and she's trying to get out the door. He had to put her in her place. She was acting too crazy. Anyway, so Ben is the only one left standing. And he goes to the cellar and he locks the cellar door. And he kills the new ghoul family down there. He finally gets to shoot Harry good and dead in his head. Great. Revenge. And you know, he's down in the cellar. And this is where we get my second favorite line because it goes over to the the Sheriff McClellan. It goes over to like the hunting party. So they have a hunting party in that area, and they are going to clear every ghoul out. And so they're talking, and the newscaster's like, "So are they dead or something like that?" It was I don't remember what he says exactly, but the Sheriff McClellan goes, "Oh yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up." And it is like my second favorite line. It's so good.
Are they slow moving, Chief?
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
They're all messed up. It's so good. Anyway, the hunting party makes it to the farmhouse. Ben can hear like sirens outside and people talking. And so he comes up. He's survived. And he survived following Harry's advice. Ugh! The cellar was the place to stay. Because the ghouls got in, but they were not able to get into the cellar. So he comes out and he's looking through the window. And a guy outside's like, I heard something in there. There's something in there. And then Sheriff McClellan's like, take him out, boys. And he shoots him in the head. And that's the end of Ben. Ugh. And that's the end of the movie. The end of the movie is like almost like crime scene photos where they're like grabbing the bodies with meat hooks and throwing them on the fire. It's like really sick. That's the end of the movie. And we can thank Dwayne Jones for that ending because initially Romero and Russo wanted Ben to live. And he said no. He said no. He said it would be more fitting if he died. Quote, I convinced George that the black community would rather see me dead than saved. After all that had gone on, in a corny and symbolically confusing way, Jones said. The heroes never die in American movies. The jolt of that, and the double jolt of the hero being black, seemed like a double-barreled whammy. So that was why he fought for him to die, which was such a beautiful and sad and poetic ending to this movie. And I hate it and love it at the same time. You want so badly for Ben to survive. But then it also adds this connotation of like, did they know that he was alive? And was this like a racism thing? Because that's been brought up. Like, is it like that the sheriff and men are racist? And so like, they're just like using this as a way to also like hunt people or what. So there's a lot that comes up through this, but it's beautiful and it's poetic and it I'm so glad that we got the ending that we did. I really am.
Okay, come over. The police and the other part. He's the dead one. Get up here. Nick, Tony, Steve, you want to get out in that field and build me a bonfire? You, drag that out of here and throw it on the fire. Nothing down here. All right, go ahead down and give him a hand. Let's go check out the house, man. There's something there. I heard a noise. All right, Vince, hit him in the head, right between the eyes.
So that's it. That's Night of the Living Dead. That's, hopefully that wasn't a horrendous retelling of a movie that you probably like if you're watching this video. All right, take it away,
Well, what do you
Aiden.
want to
What you
know? Let's
got
see,
for me?
like, okay. Well, let's talk about like some of the things that I noticed just doing on a low budget, um, because that is something that I noticed a lot of, like when I was looking at like the filming and stuff. Um, Pretty much any fight there was very much pulled from the stage. I don't know if you have any like background in any of that, but I did some plays in high school, and we did like stage fighting a lot, which basically means like a lot of times, like for example, say you have like two people and one of them is like pulling someone's hair, right, and kind of like trying to whatever. Um, what they would do is they'd like you'd ball up your fists and you'd put it on the back of their head or whatever or wherever, and they would put their hand and they would control you. So I noticed like a lot of that of like if they put their hands on someone, it
Mhm.
was whoever was getting attacked was very much in control. You could see that with the zombie or the ghouls, and you could see that with the characters later in the film, which I thought was cool. Um, and obviously, they used a lot of close-up shots, so that way you couldn't see any of those things because really every death in this movie you don't really see most of them. Like Helen's death, it's just her face. You don't actually see like the stabbing. You'll either see her face or
Mhm.
you'll either see the daughter, doing this little number, um, which I thought was cool. Um, but yeah, it's definitely interesting to me because, obviously this is my first time watching it, and I have experience from other zombie content. And it's interesting to go back because so many of these things are things that we just come to know. Um, about the genre, um, that I have to actually like. It's like I have to like clear the slate before going in because I'm like, well, obviously you get them in the head, or obviously they're going to come back if you don't, they're if they died some other way. But these are things that were not.
They set
Yeah, so
they set those tropes. Yeah,
it's
like they
interesting because the
wrote the
whole
rule book.
time,
Yeah.
I was waiting for the daughter to get up and bite someone, and but the characters, I mean, which Ben does comment on it. He says, who knows what kind of sickness these things can pass on. But there's
Mhm.
not really a conversation of her coming back, which I think is interesting because, again, it's just these things that we've come to know about this genre. And it was easy for me to forget that this set those precedents, this set those lines in the future. Um, but I will say it was an interesting choice that I felt like pretty much all of the characters were pretty dumb. Um, Even to the point where like there's a scene early on where Ben basically figures out that to kill a ghoul you have to get it in the head because he tries to shoot it twice and it keeps coming and then he shoots it in the head and it falls. Uh,
Mhm.
but then the next time he does not go for the head. And I'm like, my guy, obviously you figured out what worked the first time. I don't know why you're struggling right now. But that's also coming from the guy that shot a gas pump.
I know.
So um,
Oh,
asking too
fair.
much, clearly. But my favorite character in the film was Helen, um, who also delivers one of my favorite lines of dialogue, I think, in anything now. Let me pull it up so I don't butcher this. Just because I think that this quote carries on so much further um, than just this film. When she tells Harry, she says, "We may not enjoy living together, but dying together isn't going to solve anything." To me, that is like the quote when it comes to the zombie
That's
genre
good.
as a whole, because I think that's one of the reasons why we gravitate towards these stories. Um, is because you see people from different backgrounds and different ideologies coming together to fight for a common cause. And especially I was going to say now, but even then, the 60s were a very tumultuous time. We talked a little bit about the civil rights movement, but Stonewall happened then.
Mhm.
There was a lot of really women were fighting for, there was a lot of different movements happening then. Elderly people, people from different races, just anything in America. So
Yeah.
I think that speaks to the larger societal context.
Well, and Vietnam was
Exactly.
going
So
on
there is,
too.
I mean, pretty much any group you can think of was fighting for something at the time. And I think that that quote speaks to a much larger issue in society at the time and today. But we may not enjoy living together, but dying together isn't going to solve anything, and we see that here. And I think that is again one of the reasons why I gravitate towards this content is because you see characters from different backgrounds. In this case, like we talked about, it was the first time a black man had really been this starring role or chosen based on his capabilities as an actor. And I think that's an interesting thing to know that, the racial tensions at the time, that may have not been something that, you know, they liked living together, but they kind of put that aside or tried to until the end when him and Harry kind of go at it. But, and then they all die because the inability to unite, essentially. Uh,
Mhm. Yeah, it's like like zombie content is the great equalizer, right? Like if something so devastating happens, like I mean really anything like dystopian style, like any post-apocalyptic like great, malady happens, all of a sudden everyone's at that zero starting point, right? So it doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or not. Doesn't matter what your skin color is. Doesn't matter what sexual orientation you are. None of that matters because you're all just fighting to live
yeah, and it's
again.
like we talked about earlier.
And it's part of the
Yeah,
draw.
it's
It's part of the draw.
as a survivor, you're judged on your capabilities, not the color of the skin or not, your religious beliefs or not this, that, or the third. So that's why that quote really hit me, just because I think it's such a good line of dialogue, not only from this film, but to the zombie genre and even further than that as well. So that was one of the things that really stuck with me. Because like when I was watching it, I really went, "Oh
Yeah.
damn, that's good."
I didn't even really like I didn't really catch it, so like thank you for catching that. It was good. It's good. It's really good. So there's like it's not like a definitive answer, but we are given like some information as to why. And it's funny because it reminds me yet again of one of our favorite people um who wrote The Walking Dead because it gives it pull he clearly pulled inspiration from this. Clearly. Um so there is a probe that happened on Venus, I think is what they said. I do not remember, but there's a probe in space and it resulted in a lot of radiation. And that's really all we get. We don't get anything else. So it's kind of interesting. It's also interesting because initially Russo and Romero wanted this to be like an alien film. This was going to be like a sci-fi. And so I think that's kind of where that comes from. And it reminds me a lot of if you think back to Plan 9 from Outer Space. Horrible movie. It's rated as one of the worst movies of all time. Which is baffling because it's got Bella Lugosi in it, so it's wild. But it was an older movie, and it's done very much in that same style where like there's zombies, but they're not really
Mhm.
zombies, but it has to do with aliens. It's like vampires that come from outer space. Anyway, so it's kind of like there was a real melding of genres back then. But prior to this movie, zombies as we now know them did not exist. This was the first case. And so I love that like we didn't even call them zombies because that developed over time. Zombies were something completely different. It was really heavy into like Haitian culture and like voodoo and hoodoo and all of those spiritual beliefs from Haitian culture. That's where a lot of this came from. It roots in their belief system, their spirituality, their mythology, and so Hollywood took that, oversimplified it, of course, as they do, and produced movies like White Zombie, or the Zombies of Moro Tao, or there's tons of them, and they were all very much like that style of like someone controlled the zombies. They weren't capable of movement or thought like on their own. And so it's really interesting that we migrated towards this, but this was originally called ghouls. So like how did we get to zombie eventually? But anyway, I'm sure we'll delve more into that over time because we'll be going through more movies like this. The movie was filmed on 35 millimeter black and white film, which was a budget technique, not a like a choice or because they needed to. It was just because that was the cheapest way to make the film.
But I think
Now,
that
you might be asking
adds to
yourself,
it.
Romero and Russo. I do too. I do, especially for a horror movie. It was a solid choice. You may be asking yourself, like, Romero and Russo, you don't hear of them together again. Like, you hear of George Romero, and you may even hear of John Russo, but they are no longer a team after this. So they had a disagreement on how this story should go from this point forward. They were obviously going to make more movies, but they couldn't decide. Like, Russo wanted to go more comedy horror, which is what they had kind of both originally agreed on in the first place. But Romero decided to take it in a more serious direction, and he also actually shoehorns a lot of social issues into his films after this point. So the fact that it spoke to so many people on that level, it's like he decided that's the route he wanted to go then. So because there was a dispute over who was going to take what, it was decided that Russo would take the Living Dead portion. So Russo ended up doing the Return of the Living Dead movies, and Romero went for Of the Dead, which is where we get Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, etc. So that's how they decided to do that. So they split as a group, and technically they established that both franchises then could technically exist in canon because they both stem from the first movie, which is interesting. It was an interesting compromise that they came up with. The other thing I wanted to talk about, special effects. So these are some tantalizing tidbits here that you're getting. Special effects were done by Marilyn Eastman. You go, girl. So she did the special effects, which is awesome. She essentially helped with like wardrobe and helped them to like get the viscosity for the blood and stuff, which is interesting. The job was offered to one Tom Savini, who was then drafted to Vietnam. So he was gone. And so his first feature film became Dawn of the Dead. He came back to work with Romero afterwards. And so it's interesting because a lot of these techniques and stuff horror wasn't like this gory, you know what I mean? Horror wasn't this gory. When we see like the body parts that they're eating, like the ghouls are eating and stuff, a lot of that stuff was done with like mortician's wax, which is interesting. So, 'cause, like, they didn't have like latex products then, for this. Different world now. All right, so that was it. I think I had. Do you have anything else? Any other fun
Well,
facts?
I'm gonna just say a couple things that I just thought while watching the movie that aren't really relevant, but
Oh wait, share the thing that you found out earlier.
Yeah. So
with a
here, let me
car.
pull this. So I want to make very clear, I have not looked into this further. I just found it during an editing break. But this is listed on IMDb under the trivia section. And it says that... Okay, so Russell Striner, who played Johnny and was also a producer on the film, his mother owned Barbara and Johnny's car from the first few scenes of the film. And those scenes were shot over 2 days in the cemetery. And during a break in filming, someone ran into the car, leaving a dent that was very visible on camera, which led Romero to rewrite the scene so that the car comes to a stop after crashing into a tree, which we talked about a little bit earlier, um, when she's trying to get away from the cemetery zombie and puts the car in neutral. And her poor driving skills, but that is why that came to be. Allegedly, again, haven't done any further research, so don't quote me on that. Quote IMDb on that.
I think it's a really interesting piece of trivia if it's true.
Right.
And also, then we can't hate as much on Barbara.
Right. I did want to say there were a couple of the actors in this film that reminded me of other actors. For example, Judith O'Dea, who plays Barbara. There were certain angles when she turned her head where she looked so much like Juno Temple, of Ted Lasso fame.
I can see
Keely,
that.
for some reason.
Yeah,
I don't know why. And also something that oh my goodness, what's her name? This poster is from my Criterion Collection Blu-ray, and it's got a bunch of information on the back, so that's why I keep flipping it, because there's like all this, there's like a cast list and all this stuff on here. So I'm not just like, ooh, look at my poster. Who am I looking at? Marilyn
He's just
Eastman.
showing off this poster he's got.
There were beats of her performance that really just reminded me of Joan Crawford for some reason. Like, I don't know what it was about her, but I was getting some like Joan Crawford from her. And I like that. And I also looked at, apparently she's not in a lot of films, which I thought was interesting, because I was like, I'd like to watch more of her work. It was really, really good, but then she was not in a lot. So, but
okay, so let's go ahead. I guess I'll develop some sort of slide for this, but
okay.
Superior Survivor. So who do you believe was the superior survivor? No
so these
one.
categories are going to be quite difficult.
No one is crowned.
I mean, I feel like you have to say Ben, just because he had the most agency and did the most. But he's also the same person who shot a gas pump and set a recliner on fire on the porch. So there is that. But I guess overall, he did survive the longest. He did have some smart thoughts, like you said, trying to stop the fire from spreading. He, tried to board everything up. So he probably had the most smart moments. My favorite character, again, would be Helen. But I can't really justify giving her the superior survivor title just because she did not do a whole lot in terms of trying to get the group to do anything, really. So I would have to go with Ben. What about you?
Ben is my favorite. Ben is my favorite. I have to agree. I think out of our cast, he is the superior survivor. Although truly, it would have to be Sheriff McClellan, because he's the only one who's alive at the end. So there's that. There's that. Yeah. So sad ending. Dearly Departed. Well, cue the music and roll the footage of everyone's death. There we go.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed that sadistic little journey through.
Who do you think?
The movie?
Do you have someone who you think was the either most shocking or saddest death?
I think it's Barbara. I think Barbara is the saddest death. Now, to be fair, like Helen's death is very sad because it's her own daughter. Like there's a real twist there, But to me, Barbara's is the saddest because you assume, because she's been with you from the beginning, that she'll live.
Mm-hmm.
And you even have hope till the very last minute that Ben is going to live. Right? Like you have hope that he's going to live. I mean, that's like, it's so depressing when Ben dies. But Barbara, I think because she was, the female protagonist, I think you just kind of assume that she's going to make it somehow.
Right.
And so that was really sad. And then for it to be her brother, it's poetic, but it's sad. It's very, very sad.
Yeah, I would see. I have two. Again, it's hard. So my first one that I feel like mentioning is Helen, because this is. I mean, we do see Johnny return, but I think there is like that extra layer since this is her daughter, um, and she really just kind of like falls over and watches as her daughter like brutally takes her out. Um, and again, it's one of those things where like I'm not a parent, so I could not imagine, like, can't really like say I could put myself in those shoes, but like imagining like losing your child and having them come back and then like brutally kill you with, and that thing was probably dull as hell, so that probably did not go quick. But also, um, I mean, like you said, Ben, at the end, because I think with pretty much every other character, you can almost say, like, I don't want to say their own stupidity got in the way, but I think every other death could have been avoided if maybe they were able to take out personal feelings. If like Helen was able to like either put down her daughter or at least run away without that shock, or if Barbara was able to get away from her brother. But I think there is no one else. Like, it's not Ben's fault at all. Like, he made it, he got it, and it's taken away from him. Despite everything he's been through, which makes it even tragic.
Yeah. Well, you almost wonder why he didn't yell out to them. Say like, "Hey, in here."
Well,
it's
yeah.
interesting. It's interesting.
I mean, do you think that would have made a difference? Because, well, we briefly mentioned earlier the potential.
We will never know.
Implication.
We will never know the true. Yeah, we'll never know the true story. Yeah.
Because there's the potential racial implications, but also, with them being the ones who are out there and seeing it, I would imagine, and I can't remember if they said this on a news briefing, I'd imagine that they know that people are turning if they've been bit or if they're injured from some other way.
Mm-hmm.
So because there's so much death surrounding him, would they even, would they just take him out just to be on the safe side as well?
Yeah, maybe. Ugh, so depressing. Okay, so kill of the week. There's not a ton of kills in this.
And they're not very
not
good.
Not a ton of
either.
kills. No. Honestly, probably the best one out of anything is when Ben goes out there and just like annihilates those two dudes, like with the tire iron. That's probably the best.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, there's not. The Molotov cocktails, I guess. I don't know. There's just our heroes, our protagonists do not win very often in this. There's no wins for them.
Yeah.
There's like a slew of losses. Yeah. We both shared our favorite lines, but mine again is, "They're coming to get you, Barbara." and the yeah, he's dead. He's all messed up. It's just so funny to me. And I know that your favorite quote is Helen's, which is great and beautiful. And I'm glad that you picked a nice quote. And here I am with these like two totally goofy ones. All right. So
more memorable.
This begs the question, Aiden. The question that's been on everyone's minds this whole time. How do you rate this movie?
Ooh. On a scale of what? Let's figure that out. Like, are we doing...
Well, like
numerical? Like,
you could give it... 5 slaps of a white woman out of 5. Like,
Oh my goodness. Um,
like you pick the rating measurement. You pick the measurement.
are we gonna make up one for each one? Okay, hold on. This is gonna be good.
Yeah. I think so.
Okay, hold on. I give it 4 burning recliners out of 5. That's what I give it.
Okay.
Um,
I give it 5 shots at a gas pump out of 5.
Good choice.
No, this is not my favorite zombie movie. I just knew that this was the first one that you had to watch.
Mhm.
My favorite is a little bit further down the line. It's really good for a slew of different reasons, but this is a great movie, and without it, we would not have our favorite things. Um, which I'm so thankful for it as a result. And I'm thankful that it was changed the way that it was so that we got something so poetic and so beautiful that it became a cult classic. We mentioned earlier that we were talking about Robert Kirkman. Aiden and I are both huge Walking Dead fans. And when I say that, I mean like I'm on a podcast for The Walking Dead. That's probably how you know me. And and I there were so many nods that it's clear to me that Kirkman was really strongly influenced. Dwayne Jones as a character from The Walking Dead. Um, it, there's an Eastman in The Walking Dead. There is a Grimes in The Walking Dead. There's a
Judith.
reference to Space Force in The Walking Dead. There's a Judith. So it's clear to me that he took a lot of inspiration from this film and from Romero and Russo's works. So it's just a cool little nod, and I love that. So I think we'll see more of that as we move further on. But this was cool. Any final words, Aiden?
I mean, this is obviously the first time I've seen this film, um, and I'm excited to continue to view it. And I think, which this is getting way ahead of ourselves, but I think we're going to continue to see this film's influence in every single piece of, you know, whatever we examine going forward. And I think that it would be fun to revisit someday and maybe talk about just it in reference to some of the things that it impacted. You touched a little bit on The Walking Dead and, our absolute love and obsession of that universe. And, there were a ton of things that I see in this film, because I mean, there are certain aspects, that carry over to The Walking Dead that maybe didn't carry over to other zombie films, such as the usage of the word zombie. That is not something that's used um, in this or in The Walking Dead. In The Walking Dead, there is, they don't really find out um, what it is that caused it. I mean, we know, like he said, space spore, which is said here as well, but it's kind of more in the background. And there are a lot of different things about like you can only kill them by going through the head. You can, the farmhouse. This was very reminiscent of this is a Walking Dead reference here, but this is a lot of this. I feel like this movie specifically inspired probably the season 2 finale, Beside the Dying Fire, where they're all trapped in a farmhouse. Um, and there's a lot of fire going on. There's a lot of, this, that, and the third. There's no
Yes.
shooting gas. There is no shooting gas pumps in that one. Um, but I think it's interesting because, there's not like in this film, there's no conversation about eating brains, which again is not something that happens in The Walking Dead, but you see it in other forms of zombie media. So I think it's interesting that we see a lot of things because obviously this inspired everything. But with The Walking Dead itself, we see a lot of direct going back to the
Mhm.
basics of this genre and retelling it in a longer form story and with modern storytelling. And also the fact that zombies didn't exist in the world of The Walking Dead before they started to come back from the dead. Whereas nowadays, in a lot of zombie content, they know what zombies are because they've seen Night of the Living Dead, or they've seen The Walking Dead, or they've seen whatever else in between. So I think it's an interesting thing that Kirkman did, just going back to the bare bones of what this genre once was, and telling it for a modern day audience.
All right, everybody. So that is it. That is our recap of Night of the Living Dead. This has been the first class of Zombification Education. The first class of Zombification Education and Introduction. All right, let us know what you think. Comment. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button because I'm supposed to say that so that you remember to do it. But you should comment. What do you want us to do? Do you want us to follow Romero? Do you want us to follow Russo first? Where do you want us to go with this? Let us know what your favorite zombie movie is, and maybe we'll cover that one next. I'm not sure where we're gonna go yet, but this was fun, and I'm excited to expose you to more.
Excited. Class 1 is done.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Well, we better leave soon.